Hello, and thank you for joining me today for the second part of how to get more of what you want from your relationship. In part one, I told you that to get what you want from your partner, all you have to do is ask. I did, however, mention that there are two prerequisites to that happening. Last week, I talked about the need for healthy self esteem. You're welcome to go back and watch that video before continuing, but the highlight of it was that you have to know that you have worth and value, and that worth and value is the same as your partner, regardless of your human imperfections and flaws. So, this week I'm going to talk to you about the second of those two prerequisites, which is having healthy boundaries. What does it mean to have healthy boundaries? Healthy boundaries come in many forms, both physical and psychological. So, this week, what we're talking about are the psychological boundaries. So, just like your skin helps to protect you from the outside world, your psychological boundaries have the same function. They protect you from the outside world. They also protect the world from you. So, you can think of your psychological boundaries as having two parts, much like the rind of an orange. There's an inside and an outside. The inside of your psychological boundary is what protects the world from you. It's the containing force that keeps you from spilling out into the world. People who don't have a good inner psychological boundary are those that often spill their guts, their rage, their anxiety, their sadness out into the world. These are the people who often resort to the two losing strategies, which are referred to as unbridled self expression and retaliation. More on the losing strategies in the coming weeks. So, the inside of your psychological boundary helps to keep you from spilling out into the world. It's the containing force that tells you to stop before you say something hurtful. It's what prevents you from acting out your inner rage and aggression. When I'm really mad, I can think up some pretty terrible ways to act out that aggression. More than once, I've thought about rear ending the guy who cut me off on the freeway. But I don't. That containing boundary allows me to step back and think about my actions prior to acting on them. The same is true in our intimate partner relationships. A healthy inner boundary allows us to prevent ourselves from harming our partner, whether through our words or our actions. Violent people have poor inner boundaries. So the containing force on the inside of your psychological boundary helps create safety for your partner, as well as the rest of the world. The outside of your psychological boundary helps to protect you from the outside world, including your partner. When someone has a weak outer boundary, they are too affected by the actions and the words of other people. They let in both the positive and the negative. They are susceptible to the influence and the opinion of other people. We often refer to people with a weak outer boundary as being too thin-skinned. What this typically looks like is when someone says something mean, abrasive, or simply unkind, you tend to internalize it. You take what they're saying as being true. This is especially harmful when you're in an argument with your intimate partner. We all know that in the heat of the moment, when we're really angry, we can say things that we know are not true and yet are hurtful to our partners. So it's entirely true to say that they'll do the same to you. Sometimes when your partner is really mad at you, they may very well resort to retaliation or unbridled self-expression and say something mean or harmful. For someone with a weak psychological boundary, these statements sound true. This then impacts their self-esteem. You can see that a person with a weak outer boundary will often have other-based self-esteem, which we talked about last week. So we know that having weak boundaries, both inner and outer, are bad. But can you have boundaries that are too firm? The answer is yes. People with a firm inner boundary wall themselves off to protect the world from harm. They worry about the impact that expressing themselves may have on those around them. They only know how to express themselves in an unhealthy way and have seen the harm that this has caused to those around them. Their conclusion, then, is that they just have to stop. That's how they can protect the world and their partner from them. People with a rigid outer boundary have closed themselves off from others. They fear being too connected or influenced and thus erect walls to keep others out. When people have porous boundaries, they are connected but not protected. When their boundaries become too rigid, they are protected but not connected, neither of which leads to intimacy. A lot of people, including a lot of therapists, believe that when someone is walled off, the solution is that for them to open up, to tear down the walls that they have erected between themselves and others. The problem with this is that when you ask a person to take down their psychological walls in this manner, you're asking them to then become boundaryless. They're going from rigid to too soft or porous. The solution for people whose boundaries are too porous or too rigid is actually the same. It's all about developing healthy boundaries. Both of these individuals need to know that they can be both connected and protected at the same time. They just haven't learned how. What it takes to develop healthy boundaries is to learn to filter the information that comes in. It's stepping out of reactivity, neither becoming defensive nor shutting down. It's about taking what your partner says to you and determining what is true about it to you. That's right. What really matters is your reality, your truth. What many couples struggle with is striving for a single objective reality, the truth. But the truth is that there is no such thing. There is no room for a single objective reality in intimate relationships. There is your reality and their reality. And the kicker is that they are both true and valid despite their discrepancies. So, you take what your partner has said about you and you ask yourself, what, if any part of this, is true to me? If at first blush it doesn't seem true at all, you can ask your partner for examples or evidence. The key here, again, is to listen for what seems true to you. Once you and your partner are able to achieve this, you both will be able to get more of what you want from your relationship. So you can see how healthy boundaries and healthy self-esteem are connected, and how they are both necessary before you can ask and get what you want from your relationship. Feel free to comment or send me any questions, and I'll see you next week.